Welcome. So in this video, we are going to learn how to play The Witcher Old World with the unofficial solo Automa. This will allow you to play the base game or the base game plus a number of different modules slash expansions with a win-loss condition that better replicates a multiplayer experience than the base game solo mode that comes with just beat your high score in the box. So when you go to the BGG Board Game Geeks file section for The Witcher Old World, you're going to see two files. You're going to see a PDF for a rule book, which is 12 pages long, 6 pages if you print double-sided, as well as 34 cards for you to print out. You will have 6 level 1 Witcher generic cards. You will have 6 level 2 Witcher generic cards, and you will have 6 level 3 Witcher generic cards. In addition, you're going to have 3 level 1 Witcher specific cards, 3 level 2 Witcher specific cards, and 3 level 3 Witcher specific cards. And you can tell the difference because the Witcher specific cards are all gray, whereas the Witcher generic cards all have colors on them. Lastly, you're going to get 7 special ability Witcher cards. You'll see these here. I just put them on 2 sides for 6 of the 7. And these are going to represent the various Witchers that you can play against. So now that we've talked about components, let's move to setup. So when setting up a game against the Automa, you are going to take an unused Witcher board, whether that's the Skull of the Bear, the Griffin, the Wolf, Ciri, the Manticore, and you're going to go ahead and place them next to the board, and you're going to take their player color and all their wooden cubes, and you're going to place their shields to 1 and all of their cubes on their level 1 slots. Finally, take one of their Witcher trophies and slide it under their board. Next, you're going to take their miniature and you're going to go ahead and place them on their starting space on the board. Then take their scoring marker and place it on the level 0 spot of the scoring track. At this point, you can also take your Witcher, and the Automa will always go first. So you can set your Witcher board up just like you would in a normal multiplayer game. You're going to have your deck, you're going to have your trophy, you're going to have your cubes on all the level 1s, and then since you are the second player in this is considered a 2-player game, you're going to take 4 gold, and you can go ahead and draw 5 cards from the top of your deck for your turn. I've already gone ahead and set up the monsters on the board by choosing 2 level 1s and a level 2. We have a level 1 Drowner's Nest, a level 1 Barghest, and a level 2 Manticore. Now I am playing with the enlarged monster cards, which are these right here. But if you don't have them, don't worry, this is fully compatible with just the base game. And in this example, I'm also playing with the Lost Mount module. So I've gone ahead and set up the Lost Mount per the instructions on the card. There are no changes there. Make sure you take 1 of each trophy type for the attributes, specialty, combat, defense, and alchemy, and go ahead and place them near the game board. And then find the special ability card that matches the Witcher that you're playing against. In this case, we're going to play against the bear. And we're going to go ahead and place it on their board just to the right here. We're going to cover up these special abilities in this text because those won't matter in this game. All right, so let's go ahead and create the Automa's decks. They're going to be playing with 2 decks in the game. One is going to be called an action deck, and the other one is going to be called a challenge deck. And for normal difficulty, they're both going to start the game with 12 cards in each deck. So let's get started. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to take the 3 level 3 Witcher specific gray cards. You're going to shuffle them. You're going to place 1 to the left to start the action deck. You're going to place the other 2 to the right to start their challenge deck. You're then going to take their level 3 cards, there's 6 of them, turn those over, give those a shuffle. You're going to take 3 of them, put them in the action deck, and the other 3 we're going to place to the left of the game board next to the trophy track. We'll talk about this here in a second. As the game progresses, instead of them suffering fatigue, they're actually going to level up and gain experience, and these cards are going to be added to their challenge deck, making them even tougher to defeat as the game progresses. So at this stage, you should have 4 cards in your action deck. You should have 2 cards in the challenge deck. Once again, this is for normal difficulty. You're going to shuffle the 4 cards in the action deck. and this is going to go on the bottom. Next, you're going to take your 3 level 2s, which are specific cards. You're going to give those a shuffle. We're going to place one to the side for now. We'll come back to it. And the other 2 are going to go into the challenge deck. Then take your 6, which are general cards, give those a shuffle. And once again, 3 go on top for the actions. And then the other 3 are going to go in the challenge deck. Now we're going to give this a shuffle. And these level 2, so there should be 4 level 2 cards, are going to go on top of the 4 level 3 cards. And you guessed it, we're going to go ahead and take the 3 level 1, which are specific cards, give those a shuffle, place 1 to the side. That's going to go into the action deck here momentarily. The other 2 goes into its challenge deck. And then take the 6 level 1s, give those a shuffle. 1, 2, 3 are going to go into the action deck here, and then 3 go into the challenge deck. So then we're going to give these a shuffle, and these are going to be placed on top of the level 2s, which are on top of the level 3s. So you should have 4 level 1s, followed by 4 level 2s, followed by 4 level 3s. And we're going to place this to the left of their player board. Then take the challenge deck and give this a good shuffle. The challenge deck will be shuffled multiple times during the game. The action deck for the Automa will never be shuffled the rest of the game. Once shuffled, you can place the challenge deck to the right of their player board. And just like that, we are all set up and ready to play a 2-player game of The Witcher versus an Automa. So what's the goal of the game for the Automa? Well, it's the same as yours. You are racing the Automa just like you are in a multiplayer game to get your 4th trophy before the Automa gets its 4th trophy. The Automa can win the game by meditating for its 4th trophy if that trophy is still available in the supply. So that is a change from you. You are not allowed to meditate for your 4th trophy, but the Automa is. How does the Automa level up? Well, it levels up the same way as you. It's going to have cards that are going to allow it to move up its 4 attributes. And as it moves them up, whenever all 4 are past its level, it's going to go ahead and move up. Now, if you're playing with the base game and you're not playing with the mutagen expansion, then you don't need to worry about the Automa doing anything. It's just going to say, hey, I'm level 2. I think there are some enemy cards that will trigger based off of what level you are. I could be wrong about that. But as far as drawing cards like you would, it will never draw cards when it levels up. We'll talk about the mutagen expansion here in a little bit and what happens when the Automa levels up when you're playing with a mutagen expansion. All right, potions. So whenever the Automa would be instructed to gain a potion, it simply takes one from the top of the deck and adds it near its player board somewhere face down. It does not care about the words that are written on the potions. There are cards in its Automa deck, specifically its challenge deck, that potentially could say, hey, discard a potion to do some effect. So you never have to worry about reading what's on the actual potion and what the Automa do. The cards for the challenge deck will tell you exactly how the Automa will handle potions. Just like you, the Automa is restricted to 4 potions, and if you're playing with the bombs expansion, it's also restricted to 4 bombs. And if there were ever a card effect saying for the Automa to gain a potion, and it already has 4, it just simply would not gain another one. Fatigue for us is not great because we have the trash cards from our deck, but for the Automa, it's a little bit differently. So whenever the Automa gains a trophy and moves up this track, instead of suffering fatigue, it's going to level up its challenge deck. So at the beginning of the game, we placed 3 level 3 cards next to it. Whenever the Automa moves up the trophy track, it's going to take one of these and it's going to shuffle it into its challenge deck, thereby increasing its life pool for the rest of the game. Each time it levels up, it will take 1 card, add it to its challenge deck. So let's talk about their attributes. So throughout the game, the Automa will have the ability to level up or upgrade each of their attributes. Just like you, it can increase or decrease based off of card effects. And if it were ever to reach the top section, it can never be decreased. That attribute can never be decreased. So in this case, Combat 5, if there was a monster that had a nasty effect that says reduce your combat level by 1, it would not do that because it's already at level 5. Likewise, it will never lose a level if any of its attributes falls below it. So let's talk about trail tokens. How does the Automa handle trail tokens? Well, just like you, they are allowed one of each type of terrain type. So they could have a maximum of 3 trail tokens, but they would all have to be different. So they could have a forest, a mountain, and a water. And if it has one and you defeat a monster, so let's say it has the forest trail token and I defeat the forest monster, then just like in a multiplayer game, they're going to go ahead and lose that trail token and return it to the supply. I like to keep my trail tokens in bags because it's easier to randomize them, at least for me. Also, if you're wondering about the things encompassing the trail tokens, those are called coin capsules. I found them on Amazon. These are 30 millimeter. They are very tight. I will never be able to get these tokens out of them again. So if you decide to go this route, maybe go a little bit bigger. All right, moving on. Let's talk about dice poker. This is one of the main ways that you could potentially earn gold in The Witcher. Now, with my automas, I like to make them so they aren't too fiddly for the player to have to run. So, in that spirit, the automa will never collect, earn, gain, lose any gold, but you can still play dice poker with it if you want to. So whenever you play dice poker with the automa, you need to contribute your coin, and then the bank will contribute 2 coins. This works the same way if you're playing with the automa or if you're playing against locals at a board location. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take your dice and roll them as usual. And then for the automa, they're going to flip over the top card of their challenge deck, not their action deck, their challenge deck. And you're going to reference what was rolled by the automa in the bottom right. In this case, they have a pair of 2s. Looking at what we rolled, we have 2 pair. So if the automa is losing after the first roll, they're going to go ahead and flip over a new card, and this is going to symbolizing their 1 reroll, just like you would get in a multiplayer game. So they're going to reroll. In this case, they have a pair of 5s. So didn't do much better. At this point, if you are losing, you can reroll your dice and try to best the automa. In this case, we won, so we would go ahead and take all 3 gold. Let's say we first rolled and the automa had a pair of 5s and we only had a pair of 2s, or sorry, pair of 3s. So that's what we rolled. Since the automa is winning, it's not going to flip over a new card, and then you will have 1 reroll to try to best the automa. If you win, you collect the gold. If the automa wins, all the gold goes to the bank. Likewise, if you're playing against locals, all the gold goes to the bank. Do not shuffle this challenge deck, the discard pile, back into the challenge deck until either this deck runs out or the automa needs it for fighting, because this is going to represent its life pool. All right, so what do you do when it's the automa's turn? Well, the automa wants to take very similar actions as you. As you know, in a multiplayer game, there are 3 phases. There's phase 1, where you're going to move around the board, playing cards, upgrading your resource or your attributes, potentially gaining gold. And then you're going to move to phase 2, where you'll either fight, you'll meditate, or you'll explore. And then finally, you're going to move to phase 3, where you're going to increase your life pool potentially by gaining cards from the market. Well, the automa wants to do all of these things too, but I also don't want the upkeep of the automa to be too burdensome on the players. So let's see how the automa tackles these 3 phases. All right, first phase is movement and actions. When it's the automa's turn, they're going to flip over the top card of their action deck, which, if you remember, is a 12-card deck that was set to the left of their board. So let's go ahead and flip over an automa card and see what actions and movement it will take. So when you flip over a card, the first thing the automa is going to look at is what location that it wants to move. There's always going to be a location listed here, or potentially a monster, but most of the cards, at least the ones that are Witcher generic, are going to have a spot representing a board space. So it wants to move to location 15, which is in this case, and I apologize if I butcher this name, is Gorther Guide, and it's going to move up to 2 spaces to get there. So let's look at how that actually works. So whenever the Automa moves, it wants to take the shortest path possible to its preferred location. So right now the Automa is here at 10, and it wants to move to 15. And according to the card, it has 2 movement points to get there. So looking at the paths there are 2 routes that are the same. So it could move to 14 and then 15, and it could move to 11 and then 15. So both routes are the same. How do you know which one to go towards? Well, there's an arrow on the card that breaks ties. So in this case, it wants the lower number location. So in this case, it's 14 and 11. So it's going to take this route. So 1, 2. Now the Automa is never going to take any of the actions on the board. It's going to reference its card. All right, let's give another example. So in this case, the Automa is at 12, and it can move 1, 2. That would be 1, 2, 3. There's no other shortest path, so it would move to 14 and then 15. But let's say it was up here at Novigrad, and it only has 2 movement points to get to its preferred location, in this case, location 15. In this case, it will move as far as possible to get to that location. So looking at its path, it has 1, 2, 3 spots to go there, 1, 2, 3, 4 spots to go there. It has 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to take the shortest path. So it will go 1 to Vizima and then 2 to Beauclair. But for example purposes, let's do another one. What if the Automa pulled a card and it said go to 15, and it only had 1 movement point in this example? Well, 14, 15 is 2. 11 to 15 is 2. The first tiebreaker it's going to use is there a monster at one of the locations that it would end its movement on? In this case, I went ahead and moved the monster to 11 just for example purposes. In this case, we're not going to use the direction arrow. That is the last tiebreaker. And all the tiebreakers are listed in order in the rules. But it's going to want to end its movement on a location with a monster. So if it only had 1 movement point left, it would move to Beauclair because 14 did not have a monster. But let's say both of them had a monster. How do you resolve that? It's going to move to the location that it has a trail token for, a matching trail token. So if it had a mountain, if they had a forest trail token and the drowners were a forest terrain type, it would move to the drowners. If it had a trail token for both or for none, then it will take the lowest level monster. In this case, the Manticores are level 2, the Drowners are level 1, so it would move to the Drowners. Let's pretend the Manticore was a level 1. They're both level 1, so then you would see which one has lowest health. In this case, the Drowners at 10, the Manticores at 14, so it would move to the Drowners. What if they have the same health? I've tried to think of everything. If they have the same health, then you would use the arrow. So this wants the lower number. So if they were both the same level, both the same health, it either had no trail tokens or it had trail tokens for both of them, then it would take the lower number. In this case, it's 14 and 11, so it would move to the Drowners. There are some cards that don't give a location. And in this case, it says it wants to move to the lowest monster still on the board, and it's going to move an infinite amount of spaces to get there. It's still going to take the shortest path there. Once again, it wants the lowest level monster, and then if that's tied, then the one it has the trail token for, and then it will pick the one that has the lowest health if there's still a tie, and once again, use the direction arrow to decide the last tie. All right, but going back to our original card that was flipped, the Automa started here, it moved 2, and it's not going to take any of the actions at that location. It's going to look at its card. And so just like you have 3 phases, the Automa has 3 phases represented by its card. So in this case, it's going to go to phase 1, and it's going to take all the actions on here, and all the actions are listed in the rulebook. In this case, it's going to increase its lowest attribute. So if this was the first card it pulled, it's going to increase its lowest attribute by 1. Well, they're all the same level. How do you know which one to pick? It resolves ties left to right. So in this case, it would resolve combat. But if it looked like this, then if it pulled this card and said raise the lowest attribute, then it would raise its specialty by 1. And if it did this, then it would level up. And then this symbol says it's going to pull a bomb. And so this is if you're playing with the bombs expansion. And that if that happens, once again, as we talked about, you're going to take one from the top of the deck and just place it in its player area. Next, you're going to look at the card as it moves to phase 2, and you're going to see what that says. In this case, it says, if the Automa has less than 1 trophy, which it does, then if there's a monster at its location, it's going to go ahead and fight it. Thankfully, it's just me. There's no monster. So if it can't do the fighting, then it's going to thematically explore. Unlike you, it's not going to pull a card from the wilds or city decks. It's just going to go ahead and thematically explore by not flipping any cards over, and it's going to move to phase 3. Phase 3 is when it trashes cards. So in this case, it's going to trash cards from the market in the 1st and the 5th slot. And you can see here, it's highlighted which card it is in the market. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. I know there's a little bit of glare because of sleeves, but in this case, the card said it wants to trash the cards in the 5th and 1st slot. So it's going to trash this one because slot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. It's going to trash this one, and it's going to trash this one. If it's trashing multiple cards, then you're going to trash all of them first, and then you're going to slide down any remaining cards and refill. After you resolve the Automa card for phase 1, 2, and 3, you're going to start a new action deck discard pile. And this is going to easily help you remember the number of rounds that you've played, because that's how many cards will have been in the deck. So let's talk more about phase 2 with the other 2 types of actions it can take. It could fight, it could meditate and explore. So let's talk about fighting and meditating. So when you flip over a card, and like I said, the first thing you do is you move it as far as you can to the preferred location, taking the shortest path. It would level up its attributes. And let's say this was the example, and it said level up combat and its highest attribute. Well, combat's already leveled up, so it can't level up anymore. And its highest attributes are combat and defense. And whenever a attribute goes to the highest level, you're going to ignore it for the purposes of this symbol. So in this case, the remaining highest attribute is actually a tie between alchemy and armor. So once again, it's going to resolve it left to right, so it would move this one up. Then it goes to phase 2. And so whenever you see this slash, that means an or. So it's going to try to meditate, and if it can't meditate, then it's going to try to fight. So in this case, it wants to meditate. So it's going to look at its highest attributes, and in this case, it has 2 of them. So it's going to look at the supply to say, hey, is there a combat trophy still available in the supply for meditation? Because we're going to resolve it left to right if there's ties. In this case, there's all 4, so it would take the combat one, place it near its player area, and it would move up the trophy track, and if there's any cards here, it would take one and add it and shuffle it into its challenge deck. Going back to this example, let's say, okay, now we pulled the card, and it wants to meditate, and it says, okay, these 2 are tied, it wants to meditate in combat. Hey, I beat it to the punch for combat, so it's no longer here. Well, it would move to the next one and say, okay, I'll take defense instead. But let's say neither of them were here, or let's say they only had one. That was a level 5. And it went to meditate, and I had already snatched defense from them. Then it just won't meditate, and it will move on to the next part of the card. In this case, if it was on a spot with a monster, and it had less than 3 trophies, it would fight that monster. And if there was no space, if there was no monster on their space, then they would just thematically explore and move to phase 3 where they would trash a card. I do want to point out this symbol right here means if they are in a spot with another Witcher, aka you, it will fight you. So there is Witcher to Witcher combat in this game, and it'll either fight you or you have the option to fight it. So we've talked about the cards, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Let's go ahead and talk about fighting. So when the Automa initiates a fight against a monster or yourself, or you initiate a fight against the Automa, you need to take all the cards in the challenge deck discard and shuffle them into the challenge deck draw. This is their life pool for the fight. Okay, let's go ahead and place that here. In this case, let's say it was fighting the Drowners. So I'm playing with the enlarged cards. So we're going to go ahead and move that down here. They have a health of 10. But since we're playing with the enlarged cards, we need to add in the 4 special ability cards. So we're going to take those 4, and then we're going to shuffle the other ones, and then take another 6. And create the monster pool just like you would in a normal game. Just like you, if the Automa has a matching trail token for the monster that it is fighting, it will go first. In this example, it does not have a forest trail token, so the Drowners will go first. When the monster is attacking the Automa, just like in a 2-player game, you're going to control the monster. So before you draw a card from the top of the monster's life pool, you're going to say charge or bite. So I'm going to say bite. And this says the player takes damage equal to their alchemy level. So looking at the Automa, its alchemy level is 3, so it's going to take 3 damage. Just like you, whenever it takes damage, it's going to reduce it by its shields first. So in this case, it's going to reduce it by 1. Any other damage is taken from the top of their deck and just discarded. So 1, 2. Now there's some cards in the Automa's deck that have this symbol, and it will say if this card is discarded as a result of an opponent's attack, which is what this symbol means. I've actually deleted this first part on this card to make it have more room. So this card was discarded as a result of an opponent's attack, so the opponent immediately takes 2 damage. And you're going to see that some of the advanced action cards in the expansion, they have that effect too. So the Automa is symbolizing some of those effects in its deck. So in this case, the Drowner's Nest would take 2 damage. 1, 2. And I would like to say that read over their special abilities before it starts. Like this one says, after the player creates their life pool, they discard any 1 card from their deck. Afterwards, they shuffle the deck. So it's all noted in the rules, but in this case, the Automa would just discard, it would have discarded this card to start the fight, and then when it took 2 damage, it would have discarded that one and discarded this one. All right, so now the Automa gets to go. So when it's the Automa's turn, it's going to play a combo of 1 card, and it's going to play it from the top of their deck. So we'll go ahead and flip it over. And so what this says is you're going to look at this left border side first, and it says it's going to damage, and then it's going to take 2 shields. So we'll apply the damage first. So we'll discard the top card of the monster deck, and it's one of their passive abilities. So in this case, it says the player discards 1 potion. Well, the Automa does have a potion, so it will discard it, and it won't have it anymore. After resolving damage, it's going to take shields. So it had 2 shield that it gained. And then you're going to look for any special text or effects that are listed under the fights card. So in this case, it says, if the Automa has a potion, which it just did and just discarded, it's going to discard it to deal an additional 2 damage. So in this case, it does not have any potions, so it doesn't do anything else with this card. After an Automa card is resolved, we're going to go ahead and place it in its discard pile. All right, back to the monster. I'm going to say charge. The player discards a number of random cards from their hand if they have an empty hand, which is always going to be the case for the Automa from the top of their deck, equal to the monster level. So in this case, the monster is a level 1, so it's going to discard the top card from its deck. Okay. No special text here, so nothing. This will continue until either the monster or the Automa has 0 cards left in their life pool. Just like in the base game, and I know this is a confusing one, I've seen a lot of questions about this. If the Automa plays its last card and takes out the monster's remaining health, the monster does not flee. The Automa wins. That's the same rule as in the multiplayer game. If you use your last life pool card to deal damage and it's enough damage to take out your opponent, you still win. I just want to point out a couple other effects. They're all listed in the rules, but this one says if it has a bomb, to discard it, to immediately play another combo of 1 card after this card. So it would discard a bomb if it had it, place this in its discard pile, and then it gets to play another card and resolve the effects. This one says, after doing this, to take the top 2 cards of its discard pile and shuffle it back into its deck. You don't put this into the discard pile until everything is resolved under its fights. So we would take these 2 cards, put it back into its challenge deck draw pile, and then shuffle that, and then place this card into its deck. The other one I want to showcase is the specials. Each Witcher has 3 specials. So when you see this asterisk and it comes down here, it says, okay, it resolves its special 1. You're going to look at its special ability card and you're going to see there's 3 sections. Ignore this right now. That's for the mutagens expansion. In this case, it will deal 2 damage and raise shields to its max level. So it would have dealt 2 damage to the monster, and in this case, its defense is at level 5, so it would raise its shields as high as it could go. Let's say the shields were already as high as they could go, and then this card played, you would still do the 2 damage. It would just ignore any shields gained over its max level. So the fight will end with either the Automa winning or the monster winning, or if it's a Witcher to Witcher battle, then either you winning or the Automa. So with the monster fight outcomes, the rules are the same as in the 2-player base game. The only difference is that the Automa does not gain an action card of level 0 and it does not gain any gold. If the Automa wins, then once again, go ahead and give it as a trophy. It would add any cards that are still here to its deck, 1 card that was still here to its challenge deck. And then at the end of the fight, you're going to take all the cards from its challenge deck, you're going to shuffle them together, and you're going to place them to the right of the challenge deck, and then it's going to raise its shields back to its max level, whatever that might be. Now, if the Automa defeated or made a monster run off, then you're going to respawn a new monster based off the rules in the game. If it defeats a monster, then it would be the next level above it, and if it flees, you would be spawning a monster that is the same level. There are a few monsters that the abilities just don't work with the Automa, and all of those changes are listed in the rulebook. I think there's about 8. All right, so the last thing to talk about are expansions and the modularity components. This game came with so many modules you could throw in there, and it would be such a shame if you could only play this with the base game and not utilize some of that fun stuff. So what's compatible and what's not? The Wild Hunt, not compatible. I have not tried that mode yet, but I am very eager to try it. I've heard it's hard, but I don't mind a little difficulty in my solo game. So, but not compatible. Skellig, it's coming soon. I want to make sure that this is flowing smoothly. It's balanced before working on getting this Skellig expansion compatible with it. Same thing with mages. That's the plan. Coming soon. Legendary Hunt, coming soon. Adventure Pack, which adds more cards to the city and wild decks. Because the Automa doesn't use them, throw them in there. Go ahead. Bombs. You've already seen how the bombs are already compatible. They were built into the cards as I designed them. The Manicore and Ciri, which additional Witchers, we have special ability cards for them, so you can play against them. The Troll Monster. I heard he's broken, but he's compatible. The Witcher unique action cards. So this makes your starting deck 11 cards instead of 10. go ahead and throw it in there. It's compatible since the Automa does not use any cards, any action cards. It uses its own deck. Advanced action cards. Once again, Automa doesn't use action cards. Throw them in there. Lost mounts. I've already talked about that. Compatible. Mutagens. You might have seen some symbols on cards as I was explaining them. So whenever you see symbols on cards, the Witcher will try to activate mutagens based off of its special ability card. So whenever the Automa levels up, instead of drawing cards, because it does not have any cards to draw, it's going to take the top card of the mutagen deck and it's going to place it face up in its player area. Or whenever the Automa draws a card during battle, it's going to look to say, okay, do I have any unflipped mutagen cards still available that match any of the icons showing? There's only 3 icons, blue, red, or green mutagen. And the cards will have a varying number from 0 to all 3 on here. And it's going to add whatever effect it says to this here. So in this case, it's normally doing 2 damage and 2 shields. But it's going to check if you're playing with the mutagen expansion, does it have a blue or red mutagen? In this case, it does. You're going to ignore everything on the card, and you're going to look at its special ability. And for blue mutagens, it's going to add a defense. So you would do your normal 2 damage to the monster, and then instead of doing 2 shields, it would gain 3 shields. Let's say it had all 3 of those mutagens. Well, this card only shows red and blue, and all of these are unflipped, so it would actually gain 1, 2, 3, 4 shields. Once it uses a mutagen, it will flip it over, and it's used for the rest of the fight. So the next card you flip, let's say it's a red, there are no unflipped red mutagens, so it will not do anything for this. At the end of the fight, all of its mutagens will unflip, and they will be ready to go for the next fight. If you're playing with the Monster Weakness expansion, then as the Automa moves around the board, if it lands in a space that has a weakness, it will go ahead and take it off the board and place it near its player board. When it goes to fight a monster, if it has a weakness tokens, when you're creating the life pool for that monster, you're going to go ahead and remove 1 card from the monster's life pool for every weakness token it has. It's not going to worry about the text on the other side of the card. We're going to make this nice and simple for the Automa so that you don't have to upkeep it. Weakness tokens are returned to the supply just like in the base game. So if the Automa defeats the monster, it's returned to the supply. If the monster runs away, it's returned to the supply. If it's a flat out defeat, the Automa will keep it. If you, the human, defeat, in this case, the mountain monster, then this weakness token goes back to the supply. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you play against the Automa. There are 3 difficulties for you to choose to play against. I would suggest starting on normal and then adjusting it from there. I will say at the very back of the rulebook, there is a solo summary giving you a breakdown of what the Automa is going to do on a turn, as well as a quick summary of all the actions and icons that you're going to see pop up on Automa cards. All right, any questions? Feel free to post them on BGG or Facebook or the Discord. I will be happy to answer them. I do plan on creating a full playthrough so you can see the whole shebang. So stay tuned for that. And with that, I will leave you to it. I hope you enjoy it.